Was Gregory in the right or in the wrong? This topic tends to resurface every month, where one side tries to redeem every decision that he made, while the other side wants to see him burn in hell. But what causes such friction in the community about this child protagonist? I already made a video about Gregory before, but here I will go more in depth and explain how come that some people have varying degrees of dislike for this guy. When talking about Gregory, there are many nuances that need to be kept in mind. The messiness of the narrative due to how problematic was the development of Security Breach, the difference between what Gregory knows and what the player knows in certain situations, or the fact that Gregory is a child. That's just to name a few. But let's go over everything from the beginning of the story. Freddy wakes up after falling on stage and Gregory is already hiding inside his chest cavity. We won't get any context on how he got there. The only thing that is clear is that Gregory is being hunted. Freddy instantly trusts him, not minding at all that Gregory can be harsh on words, and hesitates to trust Freddy in return.
Isn't there some other way for you to communicate with me besides talking so loudly? Shh! Will you shut up?
And this is one of the small starting things that some people might dislike Gregory for. He can be bratty and rude, with seemingly not much of a reason. If he doesn't trust Freddy and thinks he might betray or attack him, talking in such a manner is definitely not a good course of actions. Unless this is his usual way of speaking, which seems to be the case.
Good news? 5 hours? I'm not gonna last 5 minutes!
It will take some time, but later Gregory will learn to trust Freddy and will drop this demeanor. When Freddy doesn't betray him to Vanessa, it becomes evident for Gregory that Freddy is, at least for now, not a threat. It is also clear that Gregory behaves as if he doesn't know much about the Pizzaplex, and we won't be able to make a guess why until we will get to the GGY book much later. For now, Gregory, thanks to Freddy's help, runs to the exit, but he is too late. And this is a very important moment.
No! Wait, I'm still here! Now what am I supposed to do?
His goal was definitely to run off into the night, and he is very pissed off that he missed the opportunity. This sets up to us his motivation. He wants to get out. We better remember that. After that he moves around the lobby, and while he already trusts Freddy a little bit, Gregory is still Gregory.
Freddy, I found the free gift! It's a crappy Mr. Hippo fridge magnet? Lame.
We move to the daycare. Gregory finally encounters another non-hostile animatronic. But the light goes out, so this non-hostile experience turns into a hostile one.
I warned you! I warned you!
It's kinda strange that he haven't even tried to talk to Sun, but later we learn from Cassie that Freddy was always Gregory's favorite. So it might be that Gregory trusts Freddy because he has some sort of bias, while every other animatronic for him looks untrustworthy. For now he sees Vanny, and it's evident that he doesn't know or doesn't remember who she is.
Not the fountain. You didn't see the dancing rabbit lady right in front of us?
Freddy finds 2 additional options how to escape the Pizzaplex, and it is most likely here where Gregory starts to trust him completely. It also shows that Freddy will do anything to help Gregory. He behaves himself utterly kind and naive, as he still suggests that other Glamrocks might be trying to help Gregory. Some might even say that later Gregory will abuse Freddy's naivety to achieve his own goals. Moving on to the exits, no matter which one you choose, Gregory is caught by Vanessa and locked in the Lost and Found. Escaping from there, he follows Freddy's signal and finds him in an almost out of power state. Freddy asks Gregory to get him to the parts and service, and Gregory happily agrees.
Is there anything I can do?
Help me get to parts and service.
Of course I will. How do we get there?
We begin to see that Gregory seems to become worried about Freddy. It is for you to decide if he actually cares about him or is he just afraid to lose his only ally, but I would guess that it's both. After going down, Freddy is knocked out and Gregory is left alone. He sees how Vanessa interrogates Freddy, who doesn't say anything to her about Gregory again. This ensures Gregory that Freddy is trustworthy and solidifies their friendship. But Freddy is still in trouble, so Gregory has to take a risk and get him out. He also repairs Freddy, showing us some sort of knowledge of how glamrocks work. And considering that it looks kinda simple, it doesn't raise much questions. But what happens next raises a lot of questions and debates. First, Gregory and Freddy discuss how Gregory can protect himself, and it's absolutely fine. He needs to raise his odds of survival until the doors will be open again.
There's so much tech stuff in here. Is there anything I can use to stop the other bots?
Bright lights in the eyes cause us to briefly malfunction. I suppose a phaser blaster or a phascam could work.
But then he sees the blueprints on the wall.
We have to get these. We could upgrade you.
Gregory, those parts belong to my friends. I would never do anything to hurt them.
What? All they've done all night is try to hurt me.
They get what they deserve.
There are a lot of things happening here at once, so let's sort them out one by one. First, Gregory suddenly makes some changes to his goals. All this time he tried to escape at all costs and be as sneaky as possible. But now he wants to go onto the offense, which sounds counterproductive to his escape plan. He's gonna put himself in a much bigger danger by doing that. He can't know if he even has a chance to do that, because all he sees right now is a benefit and not the way to achieve it. And in case if he succeeds, he can't know what kind of repercussions might follow if he destroys at least one of the glamrocks. He also doesn't think about other options that are much safer for him, such as sneak around and wait for the main exit to open, try to open one of the other exits, investigate the reasons why glamrocks are aggressive, or simply try to call the police. Vanessa had one report about a call from the inside of the Pizzaplex in another night, so phones must be working as there wasn't a single line about them not working. Second, he wants to upgrade Freddy, who explicitly says that he doesn't want to hurt glamrocks and that they are not capable of violence against guests. That last part could have led Gregory to suspect that the problem was not with glamrocks but with something else. And I don't mean that he shouldn't try to protect himself if necessary, but it would have been great if he at least acknowledged the possibility of something going wrong with them. He doesn't do that, so his last phrase that glamrocks will get what they deserve, and the stubborn silence after Freddy's answer, makes Gregory look as being vindictive for the sake of being vindictive. If Gregory wants to escape, as was established before, it would make much more sense to try to find the cause of glamrock's aggression and convert them to help him if possible, to increase the chances of his survival instead of putting himself in a mortal danger. He has an example of a friendly animatronic right beside him all this time. And Sun wasn't his enemy either until the lights went out, which Sun tried to prevent from happening. So seeing animatronics being friendly is not out of realm of possibilities for him. Third, the wish to upgrade Freddy can mean that Gregory knows something that the player doesn't, and has a secret motivation in here. So he needs Freddy fully upgraded to be able to gain access to every part of the building. But there is no reason to believe that Gregory has any secret motivation, as there is not a single hint or clue that could lead to this conclusion. I'm not counting the notes about the Princess Quest, because they don't tell us anything substantial. They only hint that you might want to look for these arcades and nothing more. I probably could also add a fourth point in here, that is that Gregory doesn't seem to realize that glamrocks are sentient. Especially after Freddy had his existential crisis in the room with endoskeletons. But blaming a child for not treating machines as sentient is kinda unfair, so we can let it slide. At this point I think it's not hard to see why people can dislike Gregory, and we are only in the first half of the video. The problem is not only in what Gregory did, but also in the way he behaves and how the narrative is structured. Although Freddy said that he didn't like Gregory's idea, Gregory didn't tell him that he will proceed with it. So Freddy, believing in everyone's peaceful intentions, helps him with advices where to go. Now we are moving to the part where glamrocks are getting shattered one by one. You can often see an argument that Gregory does it in self-defense, and I can't express enough how misleading this term in this situation is. Self-defense usually implies that you are cornered and run out of options. But all we see here is how Gregory purposefully puts himself in dangerous situations. As I told before, the game doesn't show us that Gregory has any real reason to do this. So right now we are going forward with the plot of revenge. And here we run into another problem, the way Glamrox were portrayed. It would have been much easier if our vengeance was directed at evil weapons of destruction. But in our case, Glamrox were shown very human. They are the spotlight of this game. We see them at their best and at their worst. We see that they have sentience and desires. We see their emotions and their struggles to comprehend these emotions. We see how they are being mistreated and abused. And even if we don't know about Glitchtrap, we already have some suspicions that they are not in the right state of mind. Now we are about to make them suffer more than they ever did before. Gregory searches for their weaknesses, then lures them into traps, and then we see the sheer brutality of these shatterings in all their glory. He does this without Freddy because he knows that Freddy won't be on board with this. Gregory takes their upgraded parts, losing which drives Glamrox to madness and despair. He also doesn't show any sort of emotions afterwards, which means that for him it was just like breaking some aggressive furniture. After upgrading Freddy with the acquired parts, he either refuses to tell Freddy where he got them, or straight up lies, most likely afraid that Freddy will stop helping him. I also must note that these final quotes are again sound very vindictive.
These are Roxy's eyes?
Well, yeah. There was an accident in the raceway.
Is she okay?
Well, nothing seems to stop her. When I was in the kitchen earlier, she fell into some sort of garbage smasher.
Is she okay?
Well, she's still functional.
You could guess that maybe we are getting all these upgrades for Freddy to open the underground and fight the Mimic, since you need all 3 Glamrox for that to be shattered. But no, the canon ending is the Princess Quest, and for this ending you actually need only 2 Glamrox shattered, and one of them, Roxy, was shattered for her eyes that doesn't help to access the Princess Quest arcades in any way. And since we see in Ruin that all 3 were shattered, it seems that Gregory just decided to overdo the goal. We are doing the Princess Quest, and before we could finish it, the doors have opened. Gregory and Freddy stand near the exit, and we have a heartfelt moment between the two.
This is where I must stay. Do not return. It will never be safe. I will miss you.
Freddy, if I leave now, nothing will change, will it? There will be more disappearances.
So here we finally got a reveal of a motivation that Gregory has, except vengeance. He wants to stop the disappearances. Now it makes sense that he wanted to upgrade Freddy so badly. But there's one problem. 30 seconds ago, this happened.
Freddy, it's open, let's go!
No, I cannot exit this facility.
Of course you can! Come on, we can hide you somewhere.
Gregory was ready to leave, right here. With the Princess Quest unfinished and the disappearances continuing, he couldn't have known that Freddy would stop here. This makes it look like nothing actually mattered. Unless his plan was to return to the Pizzaplex in another night. But by then the momentum would be long gone. And where would he hide Freddy in the city when he has no home is anyone's guess. So Gregory appears to have no secret motives whatsoever. He simply tried to escape and to pass the time faster decided to go on a crusade of revenge. While the disappearances and the Princess Quest exist in some sort of a separate bubble and appear out of nowhere. Some of the mess that we see here can be explained by how chaotic the development of Security Breach was. Steelwool worked half blind because Scott didn't tell them his vision of the story. They were running out of time, they were not as experienced as right now, the pandemic was hindering them, and so on. So all of that can be attributed to lots of content that was cut from the game. However, we have to work with what we have. In this scenario, things get even worse when you think about Freddy. If Gregory had a plan only to escape, this means that he was upgrading Freddy just because he thought that it would be cool. And if Gregory would have left, like he almost did in the end, Freddy would have been left alone with parts of other Glamrox on him, to be judged by Fazbear Entertainment. Frankly, Gregory doesn't leave, and together with Freddy he goes to the final Princess Quest arcade. While Freddy is being shattered by staff bots, Gregory wins the arcade, frees Vanessa's mind, and judging by the extinguished red eyes of staffbots, Glamrox must have been freed too. Freddy was broken, but Gregory takes his still functioning head, and together with Vanessa they leave. Before we will go into the ruin, we must talk about GGY, because it seems that this book gave Gregory a bad reputation for no reason at all. In Security Breach you could have seen that some arcades have the abbreviation GGY at the top of the scoreboards. This led to a belief that Gregory could have had some sort of history before the events of the game, because GGY might stand for Gregory. You could also listen to the tapes of therapy sessions with two different patients. One was Vanessa, the other one was not talking. From these tapes we can learn that the patient is responsible for hacking the Pizzaplex. Whenever the patient was confronted with this, the therapists who did that were mysteriously disappearing. In summary, this patient had 5 different therapists. His identity at the time was unknown and the patient was labeled as patient 46. Then the book called GGY comes out and tells us a story from the perspective of Tony, who was Gregory's school friend. Tony was investigating who is this mysterious GGY is. He found out that this GGY changes the coding of animatronics and that he is also responsible for the disappearances of the therapists that were mentioned earlier. Tony got too close to discovering the truth, and so Gregory, who was in party with Tony and for the entire book was using a pseudonym name, in the last minutes sabotages the investigation. After that he meets with Tony in the library, where Tony angrily calls Gregory by his real name, and the book ends like this.
For some reason, Greg's scrutiny made Tony want to squirm. Before Tony could figure out why he suddenly felt odd, Greg started to walk away. Tony let out a pent-up breath. Greg stopped and took a step back toward Tony. "Listen," Greg said, "how about you meet me at the Pizzaplex when you get out of here? In an hour or so? I have some people I want you to meet. We'll have some fun and you'll forget all about the story and getting detention." Tony wasn't all that keen on going back to the Pizzaplex. He couldn't be in the place now without thinking of GGY and the modified animatronics. "Come on," Greg pressed. "Say yes, we'll get you cheered up."
So Gregory, GGY and Patient 46 are the same person. And with both the book and the tapes, it got to the point that some people now think that Gregory is a maniac killer, who enjoyed what he had done. Which is of course totally incorrect. GGY was just a persona that was created for Gregory by Glitchtrap or the Mimic, similar to Vanny for Vanessa. Gregory was mind-controlled into obedience. However, that raises a question. Why out of all the kids who were visiting the Pizzaplex, Gregory was the chosen one? Here comes a pretty interesting theory made by a user named GPB. Link to the full theory is gonna be in the description. I will just touch the surface. However, before we start, I must warn you that this theory requires us to think that this body in the underground is the Mimic, and Glitchtrap is just his sub-program that he uses to control Vanessa and possibly Glamrox. With that in mind, let's begin. The theory is that the Mimic decided to kidnap Gregory because Gregory in many aspects is very similar to David. David was the boy for whom the Mimic was built by his father, Edwin Murray. For Mimic, David was a friend, a teacher, and a purpose to live. Unfortunately, David dies from a hit by a van when he was running across the street. So it might be that when the Mimic saw Gregory, he decided to replace David with him. Gregory's appearance and personality is similar to David's. He also has a talent for art, and he is often shown holding an ice cream, which was a quite important part of David's relationship with the Mimic. David's sign language involved often hilarious imitations of the things he was trying to communicate. Ice cream, for example, was conveyed with a gesture that involved turning one hand into a bowl-like shape and using the other hand to approximate the shape of a spoon. David would dip the spoon hand into the bowl hand and put the spoon hand to his lips. Then, in what Edwin thought was adorably brilliant, David would rub the front of his chin as if ice cream was dripping there. Mimic copied every move David made. This encouraged David to teach Mimic more and more things. And this is what happens after David's death. Mimic set aside his tiger and lifted both sets of pincers. Forming one set into a bowl shape, he used the other pincers to create a makeshift spoon. Mimic mimed lifting the spoon to his mouth. Then Mimic used his pincers to approximate the gesture of wiping ice cream from his chin. It was David's code for wanting ice cream. Seeing Mimic use David's sign language was too much for Edwin to process. He roared in fury and self-recrimination. This similarity to David leads to an abduction, mind control, and Gregory gains Mimic's skills for hacking. However, the Mimic loved David, so he lets Gregory to still somewhat live his own life, visit school and hang out with friends. It is assumed that Gregory lived here, under the Pizzaplex, near the Mimic's lair. This bed is too small for an adult, and Vanessa had a room above the Father Blast anyway. There's many more points to this theory that I'm not gonna touch, so we wouldn't sit here for the entire day, but it sounds quite plausible to me. Everything Gregory did under Mimic's control must have left him with severe psychological trauma. He lost his parents due to some sort of an accident, and he lured a lot of people to their deaths. How did Gregory got out of the Mimic's control is a mystery, but in Security Breach he doesn't show any sort of trauma or knowledge of the events transpiring, which means that this freedom was most likely at the cost of his memories. Probably for the better. After Security Breach, many books came out, showing us that Glamrocks had a very rough life and were being affected by the Storyteller and Glitchtrap. This, together with how Security Breach established them, is enough for people like me to feel like we did something terrible and unwarranted. And then the Ruin came out. Steelwool doubled down on showing us how Glamrocks are suffering. Ruin has nailed the atmosphere of decay, despair and pain. As G-Top has said, they are all to be pitied. With knowledge that Glamrocks had no choice, watching them being like this, remembering how they were before that, while the main blame for everything is on Fazbear Entertainment, Glitchtrap and the Mimic, it's hard to forget the guy who was pressing buttons and throwing go-karts. In Ruin we play as Cassie, who is being tricked by the Mimic and thinks that she must save Gregory. And here Gregory's reputation suffers even more. Cassie is shown as a complete opposite of him. She feels like a personification of all the people who wanted to save Glamrocks in Security Breach. She is being put in similar situations to Gregory's, but her actions are glaringly different. Instead of contempt, she shows sadness. Instead of vindictiveness, compassion. Instead of trying to finish Glamrocks off, she tries to repair them. Yet her affection towards animatronics doesn't hinder her attempts to save Gregory. She just treats them as equals. Here comes my personal favorite part about Gregory. It is a little bit speculative, but it is based on what we can see and hear by the end of Ruin. Between Security Breach and Ruin, we know for certain that Gregory and Vanessa went into the Pizzaplex and trapped the Mimic very deep underground, in a room near the Mix's security system. We know this because Gregory has left there his bag and his Freddy walkie-talkie. It is speculated that Gregory was playing a bait and the Mimic follows him into this room, which makes even more sense if we believe in the theory that Gregory for him is the new David. Gregory panics, loses his walkie-talkie inside the room, crawls through the vent, and together with Vanessa collapses it. Then they reactivated Mix's security system to keep the Mimic hidden and prevent him from escaping. However, as we know, this system was very old, so they had to upgrade it with the Entity, which is why Helpy doesn't recognize it. While Gregory and Vanessa were doing all of this, they most likely encountered ruined Glamrocks. They knew that Glitchtrap doesn't affect them anymore. They saw their suffering and decided to ignore it, despite having Freddy's head nearby and knowing how much he cares about his friends. It seems that instead they have bounded them to Mix's security system, so they would help to protect this place. You can say that maybe Mix's or the Entity just has the powers similar to Glitchtrap and controls them by itself. But we can see that the only ones whom Mix's can control are Monty, Chica and Random Endos. Roxy and Sun aren't affected by it, which is why I believe that there was supposed to be some sort of a manual input on the part of Gregory and Vanessa. So they trapped the Mimic, upgraded the security, connected some of the animatronics to it, and left everyone to rot. When Cassie went inside the Pizzaplex, Gregory has been actively trying to reach her, but was able to do so only when Roxy engaged the Mimic in the fight. So he does care about Cassie, did everything he could in this situation, and tried to get her out of there. The fall of the elevator was probably not his doing. The Mimic could just break this unique battery near the elevator door and it would be enough to crush it. And the change in Gregory's voice together with the sudden interference is enough to suspect that in the end it wasn't him. Even if in the game files these lines are signed as Gregory, I don't think it's enough of a proof.
But you shut down the security, and now it's free. It's not your fault. I know you did it for me, to save me. But we can't risk being followed. I'm sorry.
So I think I covered every point of why Gregory is disliked that I could think of. Some of these points were totally false, like the misunderstanding about his GGY persona. Some of these points were game development problems, like his switches in motivation and the way the narrative is structured. But most of the other points are just choices that he made, actions that didn't make sense to players or just felt wrong to do. What's next for Gregory is a good question. Assuming that Jeremy has died, we now have 3 possible protagonists for whatever will come next. That being Gregory, Vanessa and Cassie. Turning Gregory into a full-blown antagonist would be strange, since we already have the Mimic for this role. I am Team Cassie all the way, but if Steelwool will choose him as a main protagonist, I can only hope that they will make him more relatable and less destructive. And for now, this is all that we know about Gregory. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you liked this video, watch another one if you want to. Good luck and I'll see you again soon.